It's cold, dark, and there's famine here. I need to tell you about something that's happening almost everywhere around the world right now. In the Abyss, a dark and pressurized place where it never rains, where there's no wind, just a hint of current. And yet, continuously, it snows there, and without the existence of this marine snow several thousand meters deep, whose flakes can be eaten. None of the creatures you'll see in this episode could exist. Today, we'll examine the harsh conditions that exist within us. This is especially interesting for those who live on or near the ocean floor between 1,000 and 6,000 meters deep and never really move away from it. Some of these strange animals are so cute they seem pulled from children's cartoons, while others are truly terrifying. Just seeing them could keep you awake for a long time. Regardless of their shape, these species live on continental slopes or the abyssal plain, beneath kilometers of water in complete darkness. They all have in common that they have never seen a ray of sunlight in their entire existence. Because at the depths where they live, no ray from our star is able to reach down. The beings you'll see today are born, live, and die in a world that has been in total darkness for tens of millions of years. Only occasionally disturbed by bioluminescent phenomena, and more recently, by the rare spotlights of the rovers that venture there. That being said, let's start by setting the scale of the scene on our planet. The total area of the deep sea covers an absolutely staggering expanse, estimated at nearly 300 million square kilometers. That's twice as large as all the land on Earth combined. Just think. The abyssal plains alone cover more than 50% of the total surface of our entire planet. So no image will ever truly do justice to the vastness that surrounds you when you first land on the deep ocean floor. When you're sitting on the abyssal plain, above you there are 4 to 6 kilometers of black water looming over you and pressing down on you. And all around, it's a vast borderless expanse that makes up the largest habitat on our planet and still remains largely unknown or unexplored. Here, several kilometers deep, life is sparse and encounters are rare. Because at the level of the abyssal plain, it's basically a desert under the sea, and the largest animals that live here are often spread out over huge territories. It should be noted that while on land there is an average of 5 kilograms of living organisms per square meter, here in the deep sea the same area contains on average only a single gram. And yet, despite the harsh conditions that prevail here, you can come across creatures that are often unexpected, and meeting them is almost like an encounter of the third kind. Like this squid, filmed at almost 1,000 meters deep by an autonomous rover, in a strange defensive posture, giving it an indescribable shape, like a submarine on acid. Or even this, but what is that? Okay, it must be a jellyfish drifting, upside down, completely inverted. And so, it looks uncannily like a ghostly apparition with its arm raised. And beyond this bestiary, already quite surreal in itself, the most striking thing in this dark and pressurized environment is perhaps that 3/4 of the ocean floor is remarkably flat around you. As far as the eye can see, the landscape is absolutely lunar, except for a few rocks sticking out wherever the beams of the spotlights reach. It's a vast expanse dusted with a strange powder. Everything appears coated in a thin layer of gray. And when you pay attention to what's happening in the water, you notice that it's snowing there. This marine snow is made up of microscopic debris, tiny organic particles from decomposing pieces of corpses, suspended plankton residues, excrement, and small fragments of skeletons or shells. In short, all the remains of those who live and die in the upper layers and eventually end up here. If this continuous drizzle of organic matter is a blessing, it's because in all the oceans of the world, beyond 200 meters deep, no plant is able to perform photosynthesis and grow, or even survive. So, in the great depths, there are no plants. All living things are animals, bacteria, or viruses. But plants are the primary producers, so, except for the rare forms of life that have learned to take advantage of hydrothermal resources and other cold seeps. We'll discuss them in detail in an upcoming episode. All life on the abyssal plain and continental slope relies on this steady nutrient supply to survive. Whether they feed on this snow directly by stirring and burrowing into the ground like sea cucumbers do, or indirectly by preying on those who delight in it. Life is sparse several kilometers below the surface because evolving at these depths means you're among the last to access this precious resource. Because between the moment this snow forms and the moment it reaches the ocean floor, weeks of travel may have passed. Weeks spent sinking and passing through thousands of meters of inhabited seawater. And along the way, countless organisms have taken advantage, grabbing a small portion of these organic matter flakes as they head toward the abyss. Among the multitude of creatures whose main food source is these particles, there are many types of zooplankton, but also filter-feeding mollusks, fish, and even cephalopods. For example, the fascinating Vampiroteuthis infernalis trails a long filament to collect energy flakes and bring them to its mouth, as well as numerous worms or larvae that drift in the darkness, such as Bathycordeus, a giant among larvae found down to 1,500 meters deep in the North Pacific Ocean. At the center of this organism is a kind of tadpole, a few centimeters long, which spreads a large mucus structure all around itself. It uses this to trap particles of organic snow that it feeds on. When its jelly ball becomes too clogged, Bathycordeus can get rid of it and build a new one. Meanwhile, the abandoned one starts to sink toward the deep sea, where it may eventually become an important source of food. This is not a shriveled hot air balloon whispering in your ear that it's a pair of flying buttocks. Researchers at the Mbari Institute recently discovered a new worm species, Coule de Cochon. This hairy, hazelnut-sized worm feeds by inflating a mucus balloon to collect organic particles sinking from the surface to depths near 1,000 meters, where it was filmed above the seafloor. As for these transparent worms, some species of which can reach several meters in length, and which can move just as quickly forward as they can backward. They can make turns that would dizzy even the most experienced Formula One drivers. They feed exclusively on this mist, which they collect using tiny hairs that cover each of their legs, and this makes them look like dragons equipped with thousands of oars. And all these creatures are just a small glimpse of all those who continuously draw from this falling snow to feed themselves. That's why, when you move across the abyssal plain, you're sort of the last ones to sit at the table before you. Each one takes what they can from what falls, or rather, from what snows down. Keep in mind that it's estimated that only 1 to 5% of the volume of marine snow formed in the surface layers actually makes it below 1,000 meters deep. Yet, in some of these images, you are nearly 5 times deeper. I really like the idea that this thin, steady stream of dead matter is an elixir of life for those living in the depths. We owe the existence of all these fantastic creatures to this snow. Without this meager supply of organic matter, without this continuous parachuting of food aid from above, here famine would reign, and almost all of these hostile depths would be nothing but a vast desert of black water. But thanks to the supply of this snow, sometimes from this endless expanse of soft mud, the eyes of a feverish creature appear, waiting to grow. By shifting the sands, in this kingdom of mud, snow, and sludge, it's common for the hills to be overrun by strange creatures that look like plants, but are actually animals. Like this catenaphore, which appears to be from another world.
It's magnificent, it's magnificent, it's a catenaphore, a catenaphore.
Sometimes, we find them on small rocky blocks, just centimeters above the abyssal plain, as well as on mounds several meters high. Anemones that require hard surfaces to survive, and take advantage of the currents that are richer in organic matter and small living organisms that flow along the ocean floor. This flower, which blooms at nearly 2,000 meters deep, will never see sunlight or any insect in its life. Anyway, it's not a carnivorous plant, but an animal. The Venus flytrap, with the orientation of its strange mouth, large, open, and lined with venomous tentacles, lets us know the direction of the current. Because this anemone always positions itself to face the direction of the water flow, since it feeds on matter drifting in suspension. If the flytrap seems intimidating, remember some anemone species have tentacles over 2 meters long. If the creatures settle, that is, they cling to the bottom, go to great lengths to gain some height and live perched, whether by climbing onto rocks or onto other animals. They usually do this to better access suspended particles, since the current is stronger just above the ground. Here, a stalked crinoid collects marine snow from the current, like an umbrella turned inside out by the wind. Sometimes, far from any relief, a stalk still emerges from the expanse of mud. This is not an alien mouth trying to communicate in a long-forgotten language, nor is it a plant, but indeed an animal, a sea pen that has been observed at a depth of 3,000 meters. Firmly anchored in the muddy sediment, thanks to a bulbous foot that fills with water to rise nearly 2 meters above the ground, it filters large amounts of marine snow drifting in the current. When disturbed, sea pens can emit a greenish light and suddenly expel their water. This allows them to contract and curl up almost their entire body. In the stalk, sometimes above the abyssal plain, real underwater mountains even rise, whose sides are often covered with fabulous landscapes, forests, deep-sea corals, and glass sponges that can reach several meters in height. Why are these features that break the flat, muddy monotony of the deep sea so highly sought after? It's because they offer plenty of solid surfaces for those who need them to cling to in order to grow. But also because these seamounts, rising hundreds of meters above the abyssal plain, change current dynamics with their presence as water follows the slopes of these underwater mountains. Nutrient-rich water moves across the deep sea, carrying it toward food sources. Thanks to their steady food supply, they turn the slopes of these formations into oases of life. And here, I think we'll need to pause for a bit and take the time to look. I have to admit, earlier I lied to you a little. The vast stretches of the abyssal plain are not so monotonous if you take the time to observe them continuously for several years. Because on this plain, sometimes whale carcasses fall down. It is estimated that every year around the world, about 70,000 whales die of old age or disease. In most cases, their carcass sinks to the ocean floor. From a purely nutritional point of view, each of these remains, with the largest weighing dozens of tons, represents an immense supply of nutrients. They are, in a way, gifts from above that spark massive feasts in the abyss. A single whale's body equals about 2,000 years of marine snow over 1 hectare. Supplying organic matter, it creates a brief oasis of life around the dead body. Well, if you ignore the rare mastodon falls and could stay here to observe the universe from your capsule, for a year, it becomes clear the abyss lacks rhythm. It's impossible to tell if the sea just a few kilometers away is calm or rough. No matter the season, time or weather, day or night, clear or rainy skies. The deep sea has no rhythm, no seasons, and the temperature is constant. It's almost always cold, around 4 degrees Celsius. Clearly, marine snow isn't supplied evenly or perfectly distributed. The arrival of these nutrients in the depths depends on the strength and direction of major ocean currents and, to some extent, the rhythm of plankton production. And sometimes, exceptional blooms of microscopic algae on the surface cause, a few weeks later, sudden and abrupt snowstorms in the abyss. Real blizzards of food that, to the delight of those who live there, fall upon the deep sea. In the richest deep ocean areas, you may find strange gatherings, while in others, flakes are much rarer and thinner. But overall, the sprinkled depths of the ocean are incredibly stable, and the fact that the deep waters are largely preserved. Surface conditions like pressure, temperature, and salinity stay nearly constant. This leads to unusual effects, even over long periods. Many animals found at great depths seem similar to their fossil ancestors, and their body patterns have changed very little over the last millions of years. As if they came from the dawn of time. Here, evolution seems to run in slow motion. Because once a solution has been found, if it proves effective, you can keep it as a species for a small eternity. Because your surroundings rarely change. Thus, in the depths of the abyss, we find sharks that seem to have retained morphologies similar to those of their distant ancestors, who have long been extinct. As for certain crinoids, they have clearly adapted so well to the very specific conditions of the deep sea that they have morphologies almost identical to those of their distant ancestors, which are found fossilized in rocks dating back nearly 480 million years. This video, produced by the Mbari Institute, is not particularly aesthetic, but it is fascinating because of what it shows us. Because this time-lapse film was made by a camera placed at a depth of 4,000 meters, taking only one picture per hour. For nearly 3 months, a small patch of muddy seafloor reveals an endless ballet. Small burrowing animals act like snowplows, stirring gray mud and feasting on whatever reaches the bottom. Here, the dining table is the ground where crumbs from the sunlit, richly stocked buffet fall, occurring 4 kilometers above. Even when it isn't quickly consumed, this snow that settles on the ground forms layers of nutritious sediment that can be used as resources by tiny animals and by bacteria. For decades, on this seemingly muddy bottom, we sometimes find large numbers of starfish that have never seen the sun. And they move by using their hundreds of podia, each ending in a tiny suction cup, which allows them to walk and also to catch their food. And if we had to pick a king to rule over the deep ocean floors? Then you would certainly find on the throne a burrowing organism like the sea cucumber. Because these creatures, with their simple body structure, make up, in terms of biomass, the majority of macroscopic life living in the deep sea. These detritivores are the kings of the abyssal plain. They continuously clean it using their modified tube feet, which surround their mouths when they are full, and to check if deep-sea mud has more nutrients. Elsewhere, some translucent species of sea cucumbers, inside which you can see their sediment-filled digestive tubes through their transparent bodies, soar above the ground by undulating. Like yoga instructors, relaxed sea cucumbers have flexible bodies that let them appear able to swim. The morphology of this species, about 30 centimeters long, doesn't make it a Michael Phelps. And yet, this echinoderm swims above the surface of the deep sea floor. We know of sea cucumbers that glide their whole lives, feeding only on particles suspended in the water before reaching the ground. Found from 500 to 7,000 meters deep in almost all the world's oceans, this species, which looks surprisingly like a headless chicken, is often named, for reasons I don't understand, in this abyssal Spanish. Although they lack claws or shells, sea cucumbers have developed ingenious means of defense. Some have toxic chemicals in their skin, others can harden their bodies, or even expel a large part of their organs when they feel threatened, and then regenerate them afterward. When attacked, the Spanish dancer can light up its skin and then shed it so that it sticks to its attacker. The attacker then ends up with a bioluminescent mask, clearly revealing its position to potential predators, and that's a taste of their own medicine. In short, they probably don't realize it since they lack a brain. Sea cucumbers, like, more generally, all the primary consumers of snow, bacteria, and other small burrowing animals, are extremely important. Without them, this deep kingdom wouldn't exist. By being able to eat just about anything that falls to the ocean floor, they fulfill an essential function, cleaning up and taking out the trash. Without all these creatures that aren't picky about what they eat, the ocean floor would literally disappear under a flood of plant matter and dead animals. Put simply, they make digestible what most other organisms cannot. Because by feeding directly on the decaying matter that has settled in the deep ocean, these organisms, which can in turn be devoured by lurking predators, make the nutrients present in the sediments usable by others. And above all these burrowing animals, there are slender, elongated creatures related to eels, often over a meter long, deep-sea fish, squids, grenadiers, and strange chimeras, all of them here to hunt. And sometimes they engage in brief wars in this environment where food is scarce. Once you've gotten your claws or fangs on some prey, you still have to be able to defend it and keep it, without getting eaten yourself. This crab, who was quietly nibbling, suddenly has to defend his meal against two eels determined to steal it from him. In short, here, one of the keys to survival is knowing how to hunt while avoiding being hunted, and every creature has its own nemesis. For many starfish, the king crab is often seen as the worst incarnation of the male. Sometimes, divers encounter incredible sights, like this blind lobster waving a strip of flesh. Maybe he's trying to attract some prey passing by. This fish, with Fenwick's improbable appearance, has given up on the very idea of swimming and now uses its modified fins to walk on the seabed, or with the help of strange whisker-like appendages. And equipped with taste buds, they try to flush out small organisms buried in the sediments. As for this terribly cute species of anglerfish, called the sea toad, they are frequently observed on continental slopes, down to depths of 2,400 meters. They often use their modified fins in their juvenile form, as if they were legs, so they can literally settle and walk on the ocean floor. Once they reach adulthood, some of these fish become ambush predators that remain motionless, simply lying half-buried, waiting for prey to pass by. Hidden like this, some species of anglerfish look like pizzas. Sometimes, you may encounter things in the dark that seem like snakes but aren't. This snipe eel is very common in tropical and temperate oceans, where it is often found at depths between 300 and 4,500 meters. Taking the shape of a ribbon undulating in the current, this species is absolutely harmless, unless you're a shrimp, in which case, run for your life. Because snipe eels have developed the habit of swimming with their jaws, covered in tiny sharp teeth, constantly open so that shrimp antennae get tangled in them. With its slim, 1.5-meter body, this species has the most vertebrae on Earth, about 750, whereas humans have just 33. In short, while our imagination, when it tries to picture the creatures living in the abyss, often draws terrifying, unsettling, or mysterious beings in our minds, many of the deep-sea dwellers are actually a kind of mix between the strange and the marvelous. Consider this, while it rains outside, it's also snowing on the ocean floor. This debris, which slowly swirls as it falls, keeps accumulating on the bottom unless taken by living creatures. So, deep wrecks are quickly covered by this fine powdery layer that neither wind nor rain can scatter. This gives them the ghostly look of neglected, abandoned old houses. It is estimated that 2 to 3 centimeters of snow accumulate on the seafloor every 2,000 years on average. Over time, deposits can accumulate in some areas to several hundred meters thick, and these organic layers are gradually compressed over geological time. And so, the largest cemetery on the entire planet, which is located several kilometers beneath the seas, turns into a carbon sink. All the organic matter compressed in the deep sea consists of carbon. Its origin was removed from the atmosphere by the photosynthetic activity of algae and phytoplankton, which are the first links in this gigantic food chain. Thus, this snow carries large amounts of atmospheric carbon into the abyss and acts as a buffer against global warming. And before we part ways, I'd like to leave you with a thought that I hope you'll keep in mind. All around you, on dry land, there is plenty of this deep-sea mud from another time. Compressed for millions of years by tectonic plate movement, it eventually became limestone sedimentary rock and reached the surface. The cliffs of Etretat consist of dozens of meters of this rock, formed from solidified marine snow, which was also used to build the Great Pyramids. The Palace of Westminster, the Empire State Building, just like our concrete sidewalks, all these structures contain it, and you probably put some in your mouth today. Because in our toothpaste there is a base of calcium carbonate, a chalky compound that was formed from the microscopic skeletons accumulated on the ocean floor. After spending so much time near the monotony of the deep sea, we'll explore holes in a future episode. Trenches that go even deeper than the abyssal plain, and in which we will set our eyes on those who are almost without them or have lost them. Try to look directly at the world's deepest fish, the snailfish. Meanwhile, to keep you intrigued by the black water, here's an underwater tornado.